Okay, I think it's time. Welcome to this breakout room, finance analysis, no Excel, no code. This is really something we are very interested in, working together with Day5, with Palas, who will come on screen in a second, to show how Knime can help the digital transformation in the finance analysis space. Take over some Excel tasks, enrich the stack, and really make everything much more easy and more automated. Hi, Paras. I'm happy that you take the session here, that you suggested to take this one. Paras is a great partner of Knime, and I just give the word over to you.
Thank you very much, Tillman. It's a pleasure to be here at the Knime Summit again. This is the second year for me. I'm doing something different this year, but very excited to be part of this first virtual summit that Knime is hosting during this strange time. So thank you for everybody who's joined. We have about 20 people online, it looks like. My name is Paris. I'm going to talk to you quickly about finance analysis using Knime with no Excel and no code. We are going to have a couple of polling questions as we go through this session. So if you haven't already, next to the chat window, you should be see something that says polls. And within the poll, you'll see a question that says, what role do you play in your finance and accounting department? So if you don't mind filling those out as we go along, it'll help us to get a good sense of who's on the audience and how we can better tailor this experience for what you're looking for today. So what we'll talk about today is just an introduction, first of all, to Day5 Analytics. Then we'll get into Knime and finance and accounting. I'll show you a bit of a demo to Knime, and we'll talk about some finance use cases. I'll do a demo with the reporting application built in Knime using Tableau as a visualization tool. And then I'll talk about our approach and how we recommend you may want to grow your use of Knime within your company. And we'll take questions throughout the session. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them. Even if it's in the middle of the slides and something relevant comes up, we'll take it up. So a little bit of introduction. So my name is Paras Gupta. I'm the CEO and founder of Day5 Analytics, and we focus on accelerating our clients to achieving their full analytical potential. And we do this by really understanding what their businesses are all about, getting into the weeds with the data, creating solid data foundations with their team members. Data, as you know, it's the new oil, as they say. And having those data foundations with skills in the teams and best-in-class processes is what's going to help a lot of companies achieve what they're expecting to do with their data in the future. We also build custom solutions with tools like Knime and several other tools that we partner with. So in terms of our services, as I mentioned, we like to get deep into our clients' businesses, work on the foundations and deploying custom solutions. We focus on 4 main areas: data engineering, robotic process automation. Knime plays a major role in all of our services, actually. But this is one area, data engineering, where Knime really shines. And it shines for a lot of finance departments. We do business intelligence with tools like Tableau and Power BI, advanced analytics in machine learning and Python and other tools like that on the cloud. And we also offer training. Our major partners, as I mentioned, Knime is a core product for us. Very proud to be partnering with Knime for the last several months. And we're also partnering with Snowflake, Tableau, and Microsoft, particularly Power BI. We also collaborate with academic institutions to bring best-in-class innovations to our clients. So the first polling question is, what role do you play in your finance and accounting department? So if we want to take a couple of minutes just to answer that, I want to get a good sense of what our audience looks like. And so if you go again to the poll at the top where the chat window is, you may be able to see that question. So I have about 13 questions in, 13 answers in. I'll just give it another 30 seconds. Okay, so, okay, 14. So we have quite a few people that are actually not in finance and accounting today. So what I'll try to do potentially is expand this presentation to include a little bit more about what can be applied outside of the finance and accounting departments. But for those of you that are in finance and accounting, I think you'll find some value to this as well. So a little bit more about myself again. I've got 12 years in the finance environment across 3 different continents, and I've got a background in engineering. Worked in investment banking, business to customer, home services, Starbucks, which everyone's familiar with, and I've performed this Master of Management Analytics at a local business school in Canada, Smith's School of Business at Queen's University, and worked in financial analytics. So I've got a good extensive experience in finance, and that's why I'm here talking about Knime today related to finance. For those of you that have a finance background, I've covered FP&A, accounting, and various different systems. And the fact that I've worked in a lot of different systems, it's important because it helps to explain why I'm talking about Knime and why Knime can fill in a gap that a lot of these systems cannot do themselves. I am also very good at Excel, and I want to talk about that specifically in terms of how we can move away from using Excel to using Knime for finance processes. So if we go to the second polling question, the second polling question is, what prevents your finance department from delivering its full potential? Now we have a lot more answers on this question. Okay, so we have a vast majority of people, that about 50% of people have time-consuming manual spreadsheet process, and that's actually aligns quite well with what we want to talk about. Finance departments are inundated with spreadsheets. There's several reasons for this. Legacy systems, processes that have been designed over years and years that haven't really been updated. The lack of tools that service the data volumes that we need today, and yeah, it's actually a nice segue into how Knime fits into finance environments today. Okay, so specifically talking about analyst challenges, many analysts in finance find that they have repeating tasks. They spend late nights at work on a regular cycle every month end, and they experience burnout. In my experience with Knime, and I've deployed Knime at a few companies at this point in finance departments, but I think this applies to any department for that matter that works with data. Knime allows you to automate your work. It is an end-to-end data science tool. For those of you that are just getting familiar with Knime at this summit, but that also means that it doesn't just do data science. It does all the other processes that come before data science, including taking data from multiple sources, stitching them together, making calculations, branching and doing different calculations on different sets of data. So it itself allows you to automate, and the Knime community is there to support you. So there's not a need to always build anything from scratch. You can always copy and paste due to the open source nature, and use something somebody else has developed. For analysts, they're dealing with potentially siloed data, firefighting modes. They're not code savvy in terms of they've not been trained how to code. And so when they come across these challenges with data and the data volumes that finance people have to work with, they're typically stuck for tools, and then they're heavily reliant on other departments to give them the data and the calculations they need. So with Knime, it can operate as a standalone tool to blend together different data sources, and then you can put the data out into the different visualizations you need. Just going back to that question for that point for a minute. Silo data is a major problem across many companies that I've experienced. It probably is in your company too, where in a finance department, you do need to extend beyond finance and talk to operations and talk to procurement and get the data from their systems. And so this is where Knime plays a nice part as a bridge between those two or three different data systems. And obviously, being a no-code platform, you don't need to know how to program and use that syntax that might be commonplace in an IT department. For an Excel user, going back to that second polling question, manual excessive data volumes today and offline documentation. How does Knime fit into this? Knime has been used to automate a bunch of Excel processes once. Almost any task that is done in Excel could be done in Knime, and it can be done a lot more efficiently and in a lot more repeatable fashion. So if you are finding that you're constantly downloading a data dump, changing the format, splitting it up into columns, deleting certain columns, reordering it, these are all manual processes in Excel. And every time you get new data, if you have to repeat that process again, you might as well build a Knime workflow and just build a Knime workflow once. And when the new data comes in, you just have to run the Knime workflow on it. And I'll show you what this looks like in a demo shortly. The other thing I wanted to point out is, Excel is a great tool for what it's meant to do. But with the data volumes of today, if you try to do a VLOOKUP over 10,000 rows of data, that calculation is way too heavy for Excel to handle. And chances are you're going to see that Excel not responding message. How does Knime address management? Well, for management problems, they're looking to innovate. They try to fight off the competition. They've got efficiency challenges, and they want to grow, without additional cost. And so Knime sets executives up for staying ahead of the game by allowing business users themselves to develop what they need to do. So whether you're in finance or any other data department, you can build your models yourself without bugging IT. IT also wants to help the business progress, but they also want to do more interesting stuff. They want to get into the machine learning and all these other spaces that are modern and very hyped at the moment. And they don't necessarily want to be pulling queries and doing reporting for the company. That's probably one of the more tedious tasks of their role. For finance managers, again, as I mentioned, I've deployed Knime across several companies at this point, and every manager has come back and said that in finance we had a engaged staff primarily because of their Excel worksheets, and as a result they were churning very regularly, and it was difficult to identify who was actually truly adding value. So with Knime and the deployments that I've seen, staff has got engaged with Knime. It is actually a very fun tool to learn, and if you draw pleasure from solving a problem or solving a problem by yourself or learning something new and applying it, Knime is the tool that's actually going to push your happiness at work to a new level that you may not have experienced before. So next, we're going to talk about finance success stories, and I just want to take a quick break here and look at the questions, if there are any questions. And someone won't let Excel go, and I don't blame you. Excel is a great tool. I do use it quite often as well. Knime is not going to solve all of Excel's problems, but it's going to solve those problems which rely on Excel having to deal with large volume data and repeating processes that are manually and sequentially done. That's where you're going to find the most value out of Knime. It's never going to replace all of Excel functionality. Don't get me wrong, that's not the expectation, but a lot of those manual repeating logical sequential processes are what Knime can at least help you solve. Plus, it brings in all the additional opportunity to do things like extracting information from text or keeping lower levels of granularity that Excel might need to aggregate to deal with that volume. I only see 2 questions, so I only saw 2 comments, but no questions at this point. If there are any questions, feel free to plop them in the Q&A window, and I will try to get to them during the course of this presentation. So if we go to the next poll is, have you considered a tool to automate your financial spreadsheet processes? I'll just give you 10 seconds to answer that. So we have about 17 responses. I think there's about 30 people on the call today. Okay, so that's the result of that question. So yes, Knime, and I hope that those of you who have considered Knime are actually applying it. For those of you that have considered others, there are a few benefits of Knime. I'm sure you're aware of these: the open source nature, and how that allows you to communicate with everything. The Knime server, and maybe it's going to be another tool that's going to help you fit well into your ecosystem. For those of you that haven't, the three people on the call today, I hope what I show you today will help you consider Knime for your finance spreadsheet automation processes. So I want to talk about a very quick use case with one of our clients. So this particular client used Knime to help automate the process between raw data extraction from the source system, which comes in a format which is not really usable by a general team member. They wanted to take this data and create reporting out of it. And this reporting for finance obviously is very important. It provides a visibility in terms of where a company stands at any point in the year. And everyone makes decisions of what the finances look like throughout the year. So what this team did, first they went through the learning cycle, and then they went ahead and automated this process with Knime. The process being from the raw data dump to an analytical data table, which they could use for reporting. So what the challenge they were facing was they were using Excel for this before, and the volume of the transactions was so large. We're talking about 3 million rows of data per year. And for those of you in the finance department, you know that if you're doing any sort of financial reporting, you actually need 2 years of data. So they're talking about 6 million rows of data. And when they're trying to process 6 million rows of data, well, first thing that's going to happen is Excel's got a limit of 1 million rows. So even if you did get to 1 million rows, as soon as you apply one formula down the 1 million rows, it's going to be too heavy, and you're likely going to see an Excel crash. So they were having this problem where they had to take this data, put it into Access, consolidate it and aggregate it to something which is a lower volume, and then they were able to process it further in Excel. So what they did was they said, let's take this entire process, let's drop off Access, let's drop off the Excel management, and let's do it all in Knime. The finance team themselves went ahead and built a workflow. I'll show you a sample of what this might look like. And they did this with no IT support. And this is phenomenal because that reliance on IT is something that's, it's something that's been around forever. And they were able to do this themselves without IT. This allows them to not have to aggregate their data and keep it at the transactional level. And for those of you in finance, you know that the devil's in the details. When you're talking about a number in a month, it's actually all the little numbers that matter. What are the accruals? What are the invoices? What are the reclasses? What are the intercompany transfers? So Knime allows you to keep that level of detail down to the invoice level or the transaction ID. So you can always go back and investigate what the drivers are. Once they did this transformation from raw data table to analytical table, which they could use for reporting, they pushed this table to a database and then allowed Microsoft Power BI to connect to it. Then they deployed it via Microsoft Teams. So benefits of this method, well, first of all, it was very engaging because the people that built this process had a lot of fun doing it. They actually got value from this. And it also contributed to a turnover reduction of 40%. So this paper is on the website. If you click on this link, or if you're just going to the Knime use cases, you will see it. This was a comment from the director. He said, delivering increased value is the new normal, and rushing to meet client deadlines is a thing of the past. So if that sounds like something you're struggling with today, rushing to meet deadlines, you're firefighting mode, not really doing anything innovative, this is a nice use case of how our client applied Knime to bring innovation and efficiencies to their team. I just want to take a second there to look at the questions if there are any. So, okay, I've got a couple of questions here, and maybe after this slide, I'll take these questions. Okay, so where does Knime fit into this technology for this customer that did dashboarding? Well, first of all, they started off with having multiple data sources. So Knime took that place as data consolidator, data blender, and transformation, and allowing the business to build their own calculations. It also allowed them to automate this so that it would be either a one-click refresh, or if they have the Knime server, it can be scheduled or triggered using the Knime server. So nobody actually has to touch this workflow to make it run. Then they would write it to a database, something like a Snowflake, which is very performant, scaled easily, is designed for data science and for business intelligence. So these are now the analytical base tables, which are written to Snowflake, which are business friendly. They don't talk about identifiers, but they talk about real words which the business can understand. This database is then provided to a visualization tool. So that visualization tool like Tableau or Power BI would allow the user to build these dashboards, which are consumable by business audiences. It would also allow them to send out static Excel reporting by connecting to that, write PDFs and automation. And again, if needed, Knime could take another spot in here in order to help automate the distribution of this these reports here. So one of the questions in the chat window was, are there similar functionalities like in Power BI? Yes, they are. So Power BI does have some ETL functionality, but if you know, I've worked with teams that have worked with both Power BI and Knime, and initially Power BI came up, you know, in this company I worked with a lot sooner than Knime did. So yes, you can do a lot of the ETL in Power BI, but the capabilities are much reduced. It's also not visual, so it ends up being the ETL becomes a list of items, sequential items, which are not very descriptive. They're not easy to follow. They're not easy to change. The other big problem with Power BI is that once you do something in Power BI, it gets locked in Power BI. So with Knime being open, you can write it out to wherever you want. If you wanted to write it to a database, you could. If you wanted to write it to Power BI, you could. If you wanted to write it to Excel, you could. While you know any BI tool would lock that data in. And then another thing just to mention is Knime is no code, right? You don't have to code. So some of these calculations that I've seen in some of the BI tools, they do get involved. And if you're not comfortable writing calculations in using a new syntax, you are going to struggle with applying those features in something like a Power BI or Tableau. I think that was the main question. The other question was, what are the main differences between Knime and Alteryx regarding functionality? I'm not an Alteryx user myself, but I mean, I can tell you a little bit about Knime. They essentially look the same. It's processing data, and Knime is open source, which is, you know, it can dramatically impact the cost that you're looking at if you're to deploy this across your company. There's a Knime server, I believe there's an Alteryx server as well. But apart from that, in terms of individual components, I don't think I'm qualified to talk about the differences for that over here. Okay, so going back to my slides here, I'm just going to show you what a demo. I'm just going to show you a really quick demo in Knime, and I hope this will help you see this in a tangible way that that you could apply it to your business. So just give me 1 second while I pull up the Knime workflow. Okay, so as I was mentioning, this is a financial reporting use case. And for those of you in finance, you're very familiar with the fact that actuals come from a certain financial system, and they're very transactional, very, very high granularity. But your budgets might look completely different. So I'll just show you what each of these look like. So an actual data dump from a for spend data, for example, might look like this. You've got a coding string, you've got a date, and then you've got some account numbers, you've got some amounts, and you've got your months and times down the columns here. So it's a very, what you would call a tidy data set. It's designed for pivoting, that sort of thing. And it's also very high volume transaction in terms of transactions. A budget data set, on the other hand, is typically more like a table like this. So you might have months across the top, and then you might have SKU names and store IDs and things like that. And you might even have some like straggling lines over here. So with Knime, you can easily set up a process like this whereby actuals are processed different to budgets, but then both of them write out the analysis to something. They could write it out to Excel. They could write it out directly to Tableau server, to a Power BI cloud service. They could write it out to a database and whatnot. So this is the openness I was talking about. So in this case, if I talk about the actuals, if you remember, we had a coding string, this is very typical for finance people to see. And each of these codes means something different. So what you might want to do in Excel, you might go and break this string apart and try to break it into 4 different columns. So you can do that in one node over here. Then you might want to rename the columns. In Excel, you'd have to go in there each time and change the names. With Knime, I can just set it up once, and I can change the names to something that makes sense. Then you might want to extract date and time fields for grouping or whatever other reason you're considering. With Knime, you can pull out a bunch of different fields related to that transactional date, and then use those fields to do something with them. So in this case, I just pulled out the month number and the month name. And for those of you wondering about fiscal calendars, based off the transaction date, you could create a mapping table to map it to the correct fiscal periods. And then the next part is they might want to now convert these IDs. So in this case, a SKU. In this case, a SKU ID, which is a number. You might want to convert it to something which actually makes sense. So in Excel, you'd use a VLOOKUP, right? But you'd have to bring in multiple columns to match up to that SKU ID. So with Knime, I can just say, look up SKU ID on the second table and bring back 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. In one node, I can do that. In Excel, I'd have to use 4 different VLOOKUP formulas to do this, and that makes the file heavy straight away. Then I can do a sorter. I can do a pivot, just like in Excel, and I can write it out. So in this case, I wrote it out to 2 Excel sheets, which can now be used to create a dashboard. So in this case, I just wrote it out for 1 month, but I want to show you what the scale would look like with Knime. Okay, so with this single month, one of the things is I can drill down into the details of what makes up that number, and I can go right down to the level of detail I care about. Typically, whenever you're dealing with budgets and actuals, because the granularity levels are different, you are limited by the level of detail the budget is set up. With this type of setup, I can write the actuals at a different level of granularity to the budgets and still drill down to that level of detail. So that's step one. That's the first benefit. So once I've built that workflow, I can apply that workflow for as many months as I care about. You'll see here that right now I just have January. But if I go back to this workflow, I'm just going to change one thing. I'm going to say, instead of reading a single file, read all the files in the folder that have this extension, 2020 XLSX. And so in my folder, I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 files with that type of format. So it's going to read in 6 files, and that's going to go up to June. So I apply that, and I run this workflow. And you'll see it's all run. At this point, it's written it out. And if I come back to my Tableau workbook, and I hope this works today. If I come in here and I just refresh this data, straight away, I've got my 6 months in here. So I built the workflow once, I built my dashboard once, and now I can apply that workflow to as many months as I want. That's a repeating process that you don't have to run 6 times. You just need to run it once, and it's ready for you. So if you do 6 months, you do 1 year, you do 2 years, as long as your data flow is built accurately and your workflow is, your dashboard is also built, this is something you can achieve with Knime that you may not be able to achieve effectively with a spreadsheet. So going back to my slides, we've got about 10 minutes to go, and I'm just going to jump ahead here. So with that, I think we're gonna, I'll breeze through this. This is another use case where one of the finance teams centralized their work using Knime. They centralized the cost accrual process for 20 different teams in the company. As they moved away from Excel, they uncovered a whole bunch of efficiencies, which Excel had hidden in there because the process had been going on for so long. As you saw with Knime, you build it once and you can keep applying it, whether you need to run it 1 time a month or 30 times a month. And this helped them reduce the workload from the peak period and shift that workload to the off-peak period, which allowed people to focus on the value add and save 5 weeks off a year. So this allowed them to scale without a proportional increase in cost. Typically, you can expect to save between 75 and 90% of your manual spreadsheet time with Knime. And these are examples of what type of time savings we've seen with our clients. But it's not just all about time savings. There's other benefits to this, which I'll talk about in a second. But the other applications you could consider, invoicing and generation of PDFs, benchmarking, blending data from the different sources. I talked about that. Account reconciliation. This can be a massive process, which is time consuming and manual, because you're talking about bank data and accounting data. Cost allocations, when you need to split up a cost into multiple different buckets, that can be a manual process. AR aging and following through to catch up on those receivables might be manually done today, and so on and so forth. But there's a ton of examples here that finance and accounting people have developed. So how many of your processes do you believe could be automated with Knime at this point? So if you want to take a second just to do that poll. We've got about 17 responses. So here are the answers or the responses. So based on what I just showed you, there's a large chunk of people that believe you've at least got one potential automation that you could do with Knime. A large chunk of you believe you could do 20 plus, which is great. It's great to see. That's great opportunity. Our recommended approach for those of you that are considering Knime, explore what your processes are today. How much of them are manual? How much of them are? How many of them are because of system limitations or data access problems? The ones that are highly manual, repetitive, logical, and sequential, those are the ones you want to go after. When you identify those processes, uncover how much value is being delivered by them versus how much time is being spent on doing them, because the real time savings comes into play, but there's also value associated with certain tasks that you may not be able to get with your spreadsheet, such as the granularity that you might want to retain that you can't do with Excel. Train people, and Day5 Analytics offers training programs to get your staff up to speed. I'm going to talk about one of our clients and the type of success they saw with this. And then have your staff deliver some of this automation themselves. It's all well and good to have a consultant come in and do some work for you, but that's typically a one-off. What you want to do is engage your staff and get them to that level where they're delivering for you, which is going to be self-sustaining. It's not going to be expensive, and your staff are going to be engaged, and your business is going to be robust to future changes in technology. One of our clients went through this process with us just a couple of months ago. We trained 6 students in a training course. They were given tasks to deliver some projects, automation projects, in 2 months. In 2 months, they delivered 20 plus projects, which is enormous. They almost did 3.5 or 4 projects each, roughly. And they saved 6 months of time. They are going to save 6 months of time every year going forward as a result of a one-day training course and 2 months of project activity. And this 2 months was not dedicated 2 months. This was 2 months of time that they delivered these projects while they were doing their day jobs. So there's a lot of runway here for people that are considering this type of work. So other results, as I mentioned, it's not just about time savings. It's how much is your work getting redistributed away from that peak period, which causes stress and churn for finance people. How much are you improving the auditability of your process for those year-end audits? how many errors are you cutting out of the process because of human error or aggregation errors? How much increased accuracy can you get because of that granularity? How much can this scale so that when you get new clients or you grow into new territories, you can scale this without an incremental cost? How easy is it to change with the business? It drives team engagement, it drives continuity. The skills developed with Knime are not, and this is I guess maybe not a lot of people would think about, but when people get comfortable with dealing with data like this, it's not just a matter of using Knime anymore. They've become much more comfortable with data in general. And data is the new gold, the new oil. So if your team gets comfortable with data as a whole, they're going to be able to be a lot more potent with a lot of the other things that they're doing. It also develops a community internally, and Knime has that open source community feel. The forum is very active and the members are very active. So our training platform, and this is probably the last couple of slides here, we help you bring groundbreaking innovations to your daily work without coding. Our students have told us, and our clients have told us, it's very cost effective. It helps us drive engagement, and it's self-sustaining, as I mentioned earlier, because their own staff can deliver some of these use cases themselves. It's tailored to finance and accounting. There is a project completed with the training course. There's dedicated coaching available with one of our staff that are experts at Knime. For those of you that are CPAs, you get CPD hours, and then either you will see a 6-month payback, or you get consulting credits if you were to consult with us. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly just wrap up there. I'm just gonna put the slide up, but I think Tillman, I think we're running out of time. So did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, not more than thank you, Paras. This is really very, very interesting, very comprehensive in this short time. You mentioned many different aspects of like Knime in finance, but also how this grows the community, how the open source works together with the license. By showing the web portal, I found this amazing, and I'm happy that we were able to answer a couple of questions.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Tillman. Do we want to take a couple more questions? I think we have 2 more minutes. So I will take a look at the
Q&A. Is Knime similar to Azure SQL? Can you answer that one?
So I guess Azure SQL is more of the database that you're talking about. I don't know if I got that right, but you could use Knime to perform database operations, which is what they call in database mode. So you connect to the database, but you can perform all these SQL calculations on the database just using Knime with a no-code setup. So it's not a database on its own, but it can perform those database operations remotely. I don't know if that helps. And the next question was, how do you accommodate the classic 3 rows Excel formulas, nesting 10 ifs, index, etc.? That's a really good question. So you can either, even Excel, nested formulas are very, very dangerous, because it's very easy to make a mistake in them. And if something changes and you don't change that nested formula, you're going to have an error. So even in Excel, that is not a good practice to have. That is a workaround around a bad, a system limitation on the Excel side. So with Knime, the great thing is you can have 10 nodes performing each of these steps, which still provides you the visibility. It still provides the clarity that you need, and you can collapse all 10 steps into one. And that's called a meta node or a component. If those are 10 steps that you are repeating again and again, you can share that component with others so that they don't have to go and build those 10 steps. So massive improvements in auditability, error reduction, traceability, shareability. You can't really share that nested 3 rows of Excel formulas easily with other people, because the columns are going to be misaligned or whatnot. Is this for Knime desktop, or is the server needed? So what I showed you today was the Knime desktop, Knime Analytics platform, it's called. but the Knime server would allow you to schedule these things, perform them at a greater scale, and also convert these complicated models into something which business users can interact with. So a business user may not want to see the workflow. So it's too complicated for them. But the Knime server would allow you to build this and share it with that non-technical business user who just wants to get an answer. So I think I answered the 3 Q&As there. And I think
awesome.
we're out of
yeah, I think we are done. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining the summit. Thank you so much for joining this session and staying with us. This was really amazing. Thanks, Paras. And see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.